Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. Welcome today to my full review of this, the new Timex Q GMT. No. The new GMT Timex Q? No. The new Q Timex GMT? Anyway, you know the watch I'm talking about. It's the recently released four-handed version of the watch that was the big budget sensation of 2019. In fact, Timex have been on a real roll over the last few years with hit after hit in the form of the Q, the automatic M79, the Marlin reissue, the Milano, the Marmont, and a number of others, all from their extensive back catalogue, all proving extremely popular in the budget end of the watch market. Does this new GMT continue in that vein? Yeah, I think it does. But if you've tried any of those watches, then you know that comes with its own set of drawbacks. These Timex retro reissues are very, very true to the originals, meaning that not only do they look like they came straight out of the 1970s, they also feel like they came straight out of the 1970s. So scratchy crystals, poor loom, and very dodgy bracelets abound. However, I think Timex have listened to at least some of the complaints regarding the original Q, and this GMT is therefore a much, much better watch. And crucially, one that is likely to hang around in collections longer than the Q, I think. I always got the impression the Q may have been something of a short-lived novelty item for many of those who purchased it. Now, I didn't just purchase this one, but I know a man who did, Gary from Birmingham. Gary has loaned me a bunch of interesting pieces in the past. Thanks again, mate. And Gary has an eye for a sweet deal. He even managed to get this brand new model at 25% off. Let's flip the camera and have a look at it. So to be clear, this is a four-handed version of the Timex Q from 2019 with a number of improvements. Some major, some minor. Now those improvements come at a cost. I don't think the cost is unreasonable though. These are $219 US on the bracelet. Aussies are getting ripped at 405. That is nowhere near the equivalent in exchange. But then again, I believe they are shipped from the USA. We don't have a timex.com.au distributor, if you see what I mean. As you can see, they're out of stock at the moment. You're going to have to be patient if you want one of these. They're suggesting you enter your email for notification. I suggest you hang on for a bit because there are discounts available. This is the one that Gary got. This is the one that I'm going to show you, the Pepsi. There are a couple of other variants though. There is a blue and black Batman bezel one, which actually looks really good, but I have not seen hide nor hair of it. Also for $219. And there is a black PVD version on a black rubber strap, which I don't particularly like the look of. That one is a little bit cheaper at $199. But when I logged onto the Timex site on my desktop, I was offered 15% discount. So I would sign up here with your email, then sign up to be notified, hang on to that voucher code to get at least 15% off this one. Now Gary did even better than that. He paid just over $300 odd for this one. I think that is more reasonable. That is more like the Aussie equivalent of $219 US anyway. One thing I did notice though was they've shrunk the box. Not particularly complaining because it just goes in a cupboard anyway. Let's do dimensions and specifications first, then I will tell you where these raft of improvements can be found. So 38mm in diameter, 12.5mm thick. Now that is 1mm thicker than the Quartz 3-hander. I guess it comes from the case back. It seems to stick out a little bit further, perhaps that to compensate for that extra hand on the pinion stack. 44mm lug to lug is the same, nice and compact. Now 18mm lug width, I'll talk about that a bit later on, but 70s style case, the bracelet appears to flare out at 21.5, tapers down to 17.5. Sized up for my 7-inch wrist, this one weighs in at 106 grams. Now that's nice and light, I think, but it's not so light that it feels cheap and tinny. Stainless steel case, crown, bezel, and stainless steel bracelet. High polish on the side, little bit of horizontal brush just catching the light there on that very 1970s case shape with those kind of hooded hidden lugs. Timex Q, there's just the letter Q there on the push-pull crown. It's a fairly small crown, but it's not too bad. 50 meters of water resistance, that's the same as the 3-hander. That's okay for light swimming, I would say, but not for diving, and you'd probably need to be cautious if you were leaping energetically in or out of the pool. The carryover though is that lovely piece of acrylic crystal. Very, very nice indeed. I'll show you some macro of that later on. Also carried over is the bi-coloured aluminium bezel insert, Pepsi colour, and I think tonally just about perfect. Blue on the top, red on the bottom. Looks slightly faded. I'm not sure whether that's intentional or not. Makes the watch look a little bit older than it actually is. Just like the three-hander, it is a bi-directional friction bezel as well, though unlike the three-hander, which was marked with 1 to 12, this one, being GMT bezel, is marked 2 to 24. Now, one change from the three-hander is dial colour. The three-hander dial was blue, this one is black, much more like a traditional Rolex Pepsi, dare I say it, which had black with blue and then red. Another change is a move to applied indices. Because they're applied though, they've got that nice raised texture. You'll see that again from the macro outside. Don't expect too much from the Loom with these though. The Loom is just as disappointing as if they were applied, unfortunately. But they are slightly different colour. There is not as much overt fauxtina on the hands and the dial as there was with the three-hander. One other small detail I noticed is they've changed from a black ring to a silver ring underneath the bezel. Not quite sure why. There was a piece of black obvious plastic before. It looks much better, much neater, much more integrated with the colour change to silver. But that's all small potatoes really. The big change, and the reason why I can see people hanging on to these longer than they did the three-hander, is the upgraded bracelet. It is just so much nicer. I cannot begin to describe how much better it is than that awful rolled link number that was a notorious hair puller on the three-hander. Now it looks like a three-link here with those high polished twin links and a satinized brush link on the outer. It's not, it's just a single link made to look like a three link, but hey, it looks pretty good from the upper surface and it looks super smooth from the lower surface. No hair pulling here, just push pins, but I had no problem with sizing. But unlike the three-hander, which had an infinitely adjustable kind of sliding little fold over clasp, this has a proper traditional clasp, double security pusher, Timex logo punched in there. It is just pressed underneath, but then again, it probably would have been in the 70s. However, no micro adjustments whatsoever. They are small links, not a particularly heavy watch at 105 grams, so you're going to be inclined to wear this one loose, but when you wear it loose, it isn't going to nip your hairs this time. Now the case back may stick out a little bit further, but it's just the same as it was on the three-hander. Screw on, you can see those 4 screws, 1 in each corner, all stainless steel and with a battery hatch. Zero maintenance from this one. It even tells you what type of cell there on the battery hatch. You can do battery changes yourself. It'll cost you 50 cents every 3.5 to 4 years with this one. Now Timex don't actually specify what the movement is beyond saying it's Swiss quartz. I have read it is either a 505 ronda or a 515 ronda. My money is on the 515. That is the 4-hand plus date. Like I said, 3 to 4 year battery life on these and stated accuracy of -10 seconds to +20 seconds per month variance. And make no mistake, this is a very attractive little watch. It was a Rolex homage in the 70s and it's a Rolex homage now. In fact, the reason that Gary picked one of these up is because he'd always wanted a Pepsi bezel watch. He had a look around AliExpress, he looked at the out and out overt 1-for-1 copies, wasn't really comfortable with one of those, so decided to pick up one of these Timex Qs instead. And I think that's the motivation for a lot of people who purchased the original watch and a lot of people who will purchase this one. It's a very Rolex-alike layout with the triangle at 12, pentagonal batons at 6 and 9, circular indices everywhere else, and the date complication at the 3 o'clock. The three-hander had a day date. I think the four-hander is a little bit cleaner as a consequence of dropping the day. Branding is just printed on in white, Q Timex above the pinion, GMT quartz beneath it, Swiss movement printed beneath the index at 6 o'clock, and a minute track printed around the outer edges of the dial. And everything looks nice and neat when I go right in with the macro lens. No rough edges on those hands, something I haven't always been able to say on watches costing 3 and even 4 times the price of this one. The handset is also very Rolex-alike, but it's kind of Mercedes hands without the Mercedes, if you see what I mean there. That hour hand looks like a Mercedes hand, but without the peace sign in the middle. All hands are flat, all hands are high polish. There's no loom on the second hand, you note. It's just a needle. There is a nice bit of colour there on the triangular tip of the GMT hand. which colour coordinates neatly with the southern half of the Pepsi bezel. Aluminium insert on this one is very true to the period and I think really suits the watch overall. And all of the watch's clean features are enhanced by a lovely piece of acrylic. Now this will scratch and scuff if you treat it roughly, but because it's acrylic you'll be able to buff it out with a $5 tub of Polywatch. So 50 cents for batteries and $5 for Polywatch to keep that crystal in tip-top shape for years to come. Like I said, this one is not going to cost you a mozza to run it long term, is it? But like I also said, don't get your hopes up with the Loom because the Loom is frankly rubbish. It looks okay initially when you turn out the lights, but when I turn up the speed, the indices, even though they're applied, vanish within minutes and the entire watch is cloaked in darkness after 10 minutes. It's crap. But nobody's buying these for the specifications, nobody's buying these for the Loom. You're buying them because it's a great brand name and it looks so sweet. The three-hander did, this one is even better I think, and it has a bracelet now that is actually usable. Check this out. Ho ho! No depilatory action. It does not take the hairs off your arms at all. Nice and slim at 12.5 with that bubbled acrylic crystal, super compact at 44. Now I did mention 18mm lug widths earlier on. There is one more little bonus feature that I haven't talked about yet, and that's that the bracelet is quick release, making it nice and easy to put it on some suitably retro leather if one is so inclined occasionally. Overhead legibility is pretty good. It's not the biggest watch in the world at 38mm, but it's well proportioned and those silver hands do stand out nicely against the black dial. And outside natural light, I think it looks pretty good with the black dial and that two-tone bezel. You can also see some reflection from that acrylic crystal coming into play and distortion when I move the watch around. You can also see the mixed finish, the high polish and the brush of the case and the bracelet. And I think it looks good on wrist too. It wears well on me. 7-inch wrist, I've got no problem with this slightly smaller than average watch. And there we are, just to demonstrate once again the glories of this new bracelet. I can wear it loose, I can wave my wrist around with impunity without any danger of it pulling my hairs. And it may be a mil thicker than the three-hander, but 12.5mm is still not thick, is it? And the pocket shot to finish, there it is, low and loose around my wrist knuckle. That's how I'd be wearing it. That's how I suspect most people will be wearing this one on that new bracelet. Moans and niggles. Well look, I'm sure that Pagani owners are howling at the screen at the moment that their watch has sapphire crystal, a ceramic bezel insert and an automatic movement and costs less than half the price of this one. But that's not really the point of this watch, is it? It gives you a watch with 40 years of history in its own right that has that Pepsi look, and I think it does that very, very successfully indeed. Is it therefore the best budget GMT? Well, it's certainly right up there in my estimation these days, in a way that the three-hander simply was not. Also in the mix for that title are the Vostok Komandyrski GMT, which is fully automatic and 200-meter dive capable, and the Phoebus Eagle Ray GMT, which is a 4-hand quartz featuring the same movement as the Timex, for the same price as the Timex but with sapphire crystal and a decidedly unique look. But if neither of those float your boat, I would definitely be signing up for notification as to when this Q Timex GMT comes back in stock. The Pepsi looks like it's going to be the big seller. That Batman looks pretty good as well though, to be honest. But as long as you know what you're getting into with this one, as long as you know exactly what you're buying, and as long as you do not expect a luxury watch, bracelet is a vast improvement, but it is still nothing special, I promise you. If you're on board with all of that, then I think this thing is great. So there you have it, another budget Timex retro reissue with plenty of appeal, so long as you go in with your eyes wide open and know what you're buying. If your eyes are wide open, why not check out my original reviews of the Q and the M79. Thanks for watching, I'll see you again soon.